This one should actually turn out to be a little more of a chilled out one. Just because it's 4 a.m. I couldn't sleep, and what better to do than review a headphone. In this case today, this would be the Shure SRH1840, and for me the little bit surprising thing is that I didn't see many reviews on YouTube about it. Now, why is that so surprising? Just because it's kind of comparable, even though there are some distinctive differences, with the Sennheiser HD600, which have been reviewed to death. They are super popular, they are kinda legendary by now. So I don't quite get it, even though maybe it's because of the price. Priced at around $400 or 450 euros at the moment, they are already closer to something like the 660S from Sennheiser, which I couldn't just get my hands on yet. But since they are so similar, and actually that's the easiest way to compare them for people to get a perspective, because almost everyone who's into audio has already at least once listened to the HD600, so this should help you later on. But for now, let's check what's in the box. Of course, the headphones, which I will get into just in a little bit. Then we get this really nice travel case. It's not proper hard plastic, but it should protect the headphones quite well. We also get a spare pair of ear cups along with a spare cable and the quarter-inch adapter. As you can see, this will be very well protected, so all good here. Here are the headphones. Let's talk about the cable. First of all, it's replaceable. This should not be proprietary from what I've read, but it doesn't seem something very standardized, but you can easily just plug this in. Works very well. The cable's quality is absolutely fine. It's quite soft. That seems good. This actually ends up quite late into one part, but it's fine. 2.1 meters long, good quality, nothing to really complain about it. So let's get into the headphone. First of all, the one thing that I've noticed already on CanJam is how light it is. About 270 grams, but on your head it actually feels even lighter. The construction, I would say, is actually very sturdy, because as you can see, you can bend it easily because the metal band. It's also nicely cushioned here. It's not very thick and actually split up, but since they are so lightweight, this won't matter. We don't have any steps, but by accident you definitely won't change that. So this is also fine. Of course, open back. We don't have any sort of real movement, so only here a little bit, but it's absolutely enough to fit on your head. And since we're already talking fit on your head, let's talk about the ear cups for a second. First of all, velour, so they won't heat up and you can have them on your ears for hours and hours. The cutout actually doesn't seem that big, but it extends actually a little bit below that even further. It's deep enough so my ears, which is very important for me, never touched at any single point. Like I said, since we have a spare pair of ear cups, you can of course replace them without any issues. So now let's put them on. How did they look on my head? Actually quite subtle, not quite as subtle as the HD600s, but definitely fine. But like I said, the first thing that you notice is how extremely lightweight this is. One thing that I have noticed though, it's maybe not the most secure fit, because since they are so lightweight, they actually don't need a lot of clamping force, which is good. This is definitely an advantage, because there is almost no pressure, but they still are secure enough, because they wiggle a little bit, but they will not fall off your head. There is no need actually for big cushioning here on the top, because you just don't notice it. This is one of the very few headphones that I've had that I can actually completely forget on my head. It's so subtle. The ear pads are soft, they never touch anything, they don't heat up, of course open back as well, but so comfortable. So comfortable, great overall pressure. I can't say anything else. This is pretty much the most comfortable that I've had. That's because it's so lightweight, big ear cups, nothing touches, nothing pushes, but it's still secure enough, so I absolutely love that. Now let's get into the sound and start with the sound is isolation. Of course there is none. Since it's open, I hear just myself as I wouldn't if I would have them not on. So pretty much no inter. And of course everyone will hear you, but since this is meant for home use or studio use, it doesn't really matter. Now the soundstage, since it is an open back, is not just open or wide, it is very wide, even for an open back, very wide soundstage. Therefore, I have to say, especially for games, the imaging isn't already the best, because you kind of have to sacrifice such a wide soundstage with some imaging, but especially footsteps and so you can hear very distinctly, very clearly, but you just can't narrow down how close they are. That's the only thing. But let's get to the actual sound signature. If you are looking for a headphone that is very bass emphasized, very fun sounding, then this is not it. This is an extremely neutral headphone, extremely neutral actually, because there is a little to no emphasis on bass, which is okay, because the overall balance is really important. Because what I've noticed when I had these on, okay, what I can't really recommend them for is something like dubstep or very bass heavy music, because you just won't get that. It's also not extending all that far down, but you get a lot of details, and that is the good part, since the bass is kinda there, but not really the main character here, the main cast. You hear all the details already on quite low volumes, which is the good thing for super long listening sessions, because you don't need a lot of volume, which is something that I usually want, because if I have a headphone that is usually a little bit more dense in terms of soundstage and a little bit richer, I need a little bit more volume to get all the details. Now all these details I get already at very low volumes, which kind of makes it great for professionals, because you hear everything very clearly. The mids, they are maybe not quite as emphasized or as good as on the Sennheiser HD600s, but they are separated very nicely from the vocals from the band. They are pretty much on one level, but you hear a nice separation between the vocals and the instruments. One thing that I've noticed though, even though the highs are super clear, super nice and detailed, they are at least sometimes actually already piercing harsh, especially if you listen to a lot of vocals from female singers that go quite up high. That is something that I've noticed, especially on louder volumes. But since you don't need high volumes, you can, and this is something very relaxing, because first of all, you don't know this is on your head. You can listen for hours and hours and chill out with the music and still get a very relaxing experience, which is just something that I liked so much. So very balanced, very neutral, no emphasis on bass and so on. So for who is this? I would say the genres that it fits very well is ballads, instrumentals, and pretty much everything, as long as you are not someone who needs a lot of bass. Because just yesterday I saw a review, someone saying he listens to a lot of metal and rock and he needs the bass. For me, that's actually on a headphone not an important. If I listen to loudspeakers and listen to bass heavy music or metal and rock, then I want the bass. But on a headphone, for some reason, I rather have the focus on the instruments and the voices and so on, and I don't need that much bass. In some certain situations it's definitely fine, which is when you won't really use these. So that's why I would say this is not the perfect all-rounder. This is not the one headphone solution for everything, unless you want something very neutral, because it's on a pro grade level, you get all the details and so on, but it's maybe more focused towards actually kind of some way already studio monitoring, or at least very neutral, accurate, natural music. This is what it's just made for. So let's compare it with the HD600s a little bit. First of all, just a little bit into the comfort. The HD600S, or the HD600 I mean, sit way tighter. For some people it's still a lot of clamping force. Mine still have a lot, since I actually didn't use them so much, but they fit way more secure. But due to this quite heavy pressure and the ear cups not being as soft or not as forgiving in some way, they are more fatiguing for sure. So the Shure are definitely way more comfortable. So let me just use my cheat sheet and check what I've seen in terms of differences. The Shure have a wider sound stage. They just feel a little bit more open, lighter as well. Less bass, but the bass seemed a little bit clearer. Less pronounced mids, so the vocals are a little bit less forward. It's easier to listen to and chill to music because it's super relaxing, especially since you don't need high volumes. Way better comfort, less secure, but because it's so light and subtle, and a little bit less demanding when it comes to the powering, because this is something that I did mention. I don't think you will be able to drive these on phones. Maybe there are like 5 phones that could, but usually you already need an audio interface and an amp DAC and DAC or amp, because they are a little bit more demanding. Not quite as much as the Sennheiser HD600, so a little bit like, let's say 10% less. So for me, in some way, and this is why it surprised me that I didn't see many reviews, this is the kind of next logical, at least half step above the HD600s, because they offer a little bit of an easier listening experience. Because what I've still noticed in some ways are the little bit sometimes harsh, oddly weird highs that were a little bit fatiguing on a while under the HD600s, but they also felt actually, even though they are supposed to be supernatural, and that's what they still are, they felt more colored in the mids, because the mids are a little bit more emphasized and there is more bass. They felt a little bit darker, and they have a noticeably smaller soundstage. So these feel way more open, way more light. Definitely not warm, but just not as dark as the HD600. So they feel easier to listen to, and they are a little bit more expensive, I get that, but you at least get the second pair of a cable, which on the Sennheisers is quite expensive, and the second pair of the ear cups, better traveling pack. So I definitely think they are well worth the 400, because they are better than the 600s, in my opinion, at least from a neutrality standpoint and so on. Both do a great job. But the issue is, like I said already, that we should compare these maybe to the 660S, which I just can't do just yet, but that's pretty much all I have to say about it. If any further questions, let me know. If you have maybe heard them, because I actually doubt it. And they are maybe a little bit underrated, a little bit understated for that reason. Just because everyone, if you talk about neutrality in terms of audio, you get to the 600s. Okay, in terms of value, these by now are for sure better. Okay, until next time, bye.